En el fascinante mundo de los visionarios y líderes creativos, hay una figura que brilla con intensidad, una mujer apasionada por conectar y dar forma a la cultura. Con orgullo les presentamos a Beatriz Ayala Muñiz, una líder visionaria y oradora estratégica originaria de Puerto Rico. Beatriz es una apasionada conectadora, dedicada a encender un sentido de pertenencia en la comunidad hispana y a crear experiencias que elevan la conexión humana. Durante 15 años, Beatriz ha estado en la intersección de la tecnología, la narración, la música y la comunidad. Es la fundadora y CEO de Musicasa, una innovadora y empresa tecnológica que permite experiencias de conciertos en el hogar, con músicos locales y galardonados. Además, Beatriz es una ejecutiva de publicidad con 24 premios en su haber, quien transformó marcas como Snickers y M&M's en íconos de la cultura pop. Graduada en la prestigiosa Universidad de Villanova, Beatriz ahora reside en Miami, donde disfruta de la naturaleza, la aventura y los deportes extremos. Prepárense para sumergirse en la mente creativa de Beatriz Ayala Muñiz, en Demente, donde la innovación y la pasión se unen para inspirarnos. Bienvenida, Beatriz Ayala.
Beatriz Ayala.
¿Cómo estás?
Thank you so much.
Mira, tenemos las mismas pulseras puestas.
Así es, así es. Entonces,
para protección.
Sí.
Y superpoderes.
Sí, para protección y más, no sé si lo tuyo es más para fashion o protección.
No, es protección.
Sí. Excelente. Bueno, qué manera de empezar la entrevista el día de hoy. Primero que todo, gracias de nuevo por estar en el espacio.
Mi placer.
You know, we talk a lot about mindset, and
yes.
Prior to us actually going live here, we were talking about the evolution that you've gone through to change the mindset. So, as people probably saw in the intro promos, that you've spent many years in the corporate world, learning marketing and the art behind marketing.
Yes.
So I want to start there because I think there's a lot of value in a lot of the people who follow us who are entrepreneurs who need to grow their businesses and their brand right now in a world where brand is everything.
Yeah.
Right. So take us back into that. First of all, what got you into marketing?
What got me into marketing? I love storytelling. I love using stories as a way to connect with people, and marketing and advertising, it's all around stories, and how are you able to find pieces of information that allow you to connect with someone at a deep level. And ultimately brands are led by people, people with messages, people wanting you to consume their chocolate, and people wanting you to consume the laundry detergent they're creating for you. But ultimately, the reason we buy brands is because we resonate with the stories that they represent wholeheartedly, right? So for me, it was never that I wanted to be in marketing. Actually, I grew up thinking that I was going to be a CIA agent, or I was going to be an FBI agent, because I consider myself a very curious person, and I'm always asking questions, maybe too much. But marketing is sort of like fell into my lap when I decided to change my major when I was in the university, and here I am because of that.
Interesting. You know, I hear people like Tony Robbins, and it's very curious that yesterday I was talking to somebody about how if you change your story, you change your life, and talk about the importance of storytelling. Let's see if we can dive a little bit deeper. And I think it goes hand in glove with the whole marketing piece, whether you're trying to connect with people through a story, but also you, like changing your life. If you change your story, it's almost like marketing to yourself.
It's almost like marketing to yourself.
Is that right? I mean, have you found your way in this new search of the meaning of life and everything? Have you changed your story?
Oh yeah, and my story keeps changing every day. I mean, I've gone through, like, it is known that our cells are constantly changing every day, and every 7 years you get a new, and sort of like a whole new set of cells inside of you. So we're all, like, I believe in the power of evolution. I believe that change is the only constant. We either fight with it or we embrace it, and we allow life to sort of like take you through the paths that we need to navigate in order to build the life that we are proud of, that we are passionate about, a life that's sacred in terms of like what we believe in, and the people that we choose to spend time with. Definitely my story has changed along the way, but also embracing the stories that took me to where I am today. instead of rejecting them, recognizing them, accepting them, and then transforming them, so that I can see it from a place of growth instead of a place of rejection.
Sure.
So, I mean, the power of storytelling is so huge, and honestly, that's the way I learn. Even at school, when we were taught that you had to memorize things in order to do well at an exam or a specific history class, etc., it was all about memorization instead of telling us stories so that we could resonate to what the actual meaning of the lesson is.
Sure.
Meaning of the lesson is. So back to the marketing and how my story has changed. I went through a process when I was 29, which is 5 years ago, of really understanding how my childhood had impacted me. Specifically, when my mom got sick when I was 13, and I became a very angry teenager for a year, in which I just blasted everyone that came in front of me, and I mistreated people, and then taking all that anger and bottling inside and becoming someone that would appease others just to like keep the discomfort at bay. And I became this like hyper alpha independent woman that wouldn't ask for help. And I felt that I wouldn't ask for help, and I felt weak when I had to ask for help, and I felt embarrassed when I had to ask for help. So I sort of like immersed myself in the things that I loved, which was bringing people together and controlling the music and controlling how we were going to connect and like spend time together, controlling the stories that we were going to tell our customers on brands that I was managing. Like I just diverted all of my energy into that, curating music and playing sports. I played volleyball for 25 years. And when I was 29, I actually came to the realization that I needed to sort of like open myself up to all the things that I have bottled down inside of me so that my story could actually become a story of empowerment and a story of accountability, and a story of inspiration, versus just a story that kept me down on my victimhood, which is not a place I wanted to operate in.
I'm actually very curious myself. I'm learning this process of hearing, how important it is. Like whether you're telling a story to yourself to change your outcome, or whether you're figuring out how you're going to tell the story of a brand to connect with the audience. I think there's obviously a lot of things that are very similar, but let's kind of segment them a little bit. I want to go back to if somebody is trying to build a brand and tell a better story of their product and service, what were the things that you've identified makes for a great story when trying to build a brand to a particular niche?
Yeah, the first thing is a why. Like
a why.
The why.
The why.
What's the purpose of the brand? What's the purpose of the product? What's the story behind it? What is it gonna really connect with the audience in terms of what you're building? Once you have the why super clear, then you can identify
like the how.
The how, how you want to tell that story, what it is that you are actually building, and it takes you to a place of being able to be consistent. Like if you think of the most famous brands in the world. Let's take sneakers, for example.
Okay.
Sneakers has been around for more than 60 years. What is the one thing sneakers stands for? Fighting hunger. Fighting hunger.
Yeah.
And they've been talking about fighting hunger for 60 years in different modalities, but it's always been about fighting hunger. So the secret to them is not that the product is amazing and it's the best chocolate in the world, is that they've been consistent. So because they've been consistent, generation after generation has been able to impart the wisdom of what that product does. Hence it creates loyalty amongst groups of people, right? Regardless of where you are in the store, regardless of where you are of where you're buying that specific product, everyone knows that it stands for hunger.
Yeah.
Right. So when you're building a brand, you really want to get very clear about why the brand exists, why you're doing the product that you're doing, and then that gets you to the what and the when and the where and the how. Like all those things are like the nitty-gritty details that come after you get very clear as to why, like the intention behind doing something. When I was at BBDO, we called it the True North, and we would help the True North, and we would help brands discover what their True North is. So that from there you can create a brand positioning and a value proposition and a message that can actually resonate with people from a place of relevancy, connection, but that also you're solving a problem for them. Like it's rooted in a human insight.
It's curious you say that because I couldn't stop to think that many brands or many products per se sometimes begin in not understanding their why clearly. That's right. So it's like, oh, I came up with this or I have this, but not being able to articulate it properly to the marketplace.
Absolutely, and I think that that's a huge learning for musicians too. Musicians are their own brands. They are their own products. If they were to approach their careers as entrepreneurs, I think there would be much more successful musicians and artists out there because they would own their path instead of laying reactive to what the world has to offer them, and then they create from a place of what's just available to them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, elaborate more.
Like, for example, there's a lot of musicians that become musicians because now they have TikTok and now they can create something from TikTok.
Right.
But they haven't taken a step back to think, why am I doing this on TikTok? Is TikTok even the right vehicle for me to be doing this?
Or maybe it's the wrong why.
Do I even know why I want to be an artist? Do I even know what's my message? How do I want to use my voice? We all have a responsibility and a duty to ourselves to live in our purpose and to share our light with the world. That's awesome. But get very clear as to why you're doing it, so that when the person that's receiving the message receives it, they can actually connect with you at that deeper level versus the superficial of, oh, this is just a great 30-second song and I'm never going to listen to it ever again. You want to create a legacy brand. You don't want to create a 5-minute brand.
What's your biggest takeaway? Because you were there for over 10 years.
Yes.
13, 14 years or something like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway during that over a decade in marketing that you bring into your current life to get to the level you want to get to?
Of course, that's a great question. No one's ever asked me that. But there's a couple of things. I think the first one is the power of teamwork in crafting a message. There's the reason I loved advertising and marketing, it's because it made you have to work with other people.
Makes you work with other people, other ideas, people, you know.
In crafting the right
push
message.
And pull.
It's push and pull, power plays, playing politics, all of it. But deep down at the core, we all wanted to put great work out there.
Yeah.
We all really wanted to connect with the audience, and we had different ways in which we thought we could do that. When I was in Puerto Rico, when I went back to Puerto Rico in my 20s, and I was working with Medalla, which is the #1 beer brand in the island, I got to work with people from different generations, and it was the first time that I had the challenge of bringing people with different mindsets and different ways of upbringing to create a legacy campaign for the beer. And it was really hard at the beginning because baby boomers don't understand the millennial mindset, right? And how we approach stories, and by the end of it, I remember people telling me, like, you have this power of bringing people from different generations to work on a single goal together, and that's really powerful. So that's where I get my love. I'm a connector, I've always been, and I think that advertising really helped me. ¿Cómo se dice cuando tienes que como machacar, como mejorar, like, esa cualidad que tienes?
De pulir.
De pulir, eso, like, de pulir, como si fuese una obra de arte.
Yes.
De pulir that characteristic. That's very much part of who I am. So I would say that that's one. I would say the second one, which was more at the end of my career in that world, which was I wasn't letting myself reach my full potential.
Say again.
I wasn't letting myself reach my full potential.
Right.
So I was at the top of my career, 29, already getting trained to become the next general manager for the Puerto Rico office at BBDO. And I was honestly working at a 30-35% of my capacity. And I was already doing incredible work.
So you're consciously working at 30, 35?
I knew it.
Just winging it, and
I knew
it.
it.
You knew
I wasn't taking other classes to learn other things. Like, I was just like, I'm a great communicator, and I own that, right? And I couldn't live with that anymore. Hurricane Maria happened. Like, a lot of things happened that sort of like start waking you up. But the main thing was I wanted more for my life. And I was working as this incredible advertising executive, award-winning advertising executive, and that was never the path that I wanted to take. So I could be courageous and leave that behind, or I could stay there and just take the easy way out and still be sitting at an office somewhere in the world.
But that's interesting. It leads us into more of a deeper conversation, because you then you kind of realize that this is not really what fulfills me totally, and so you go get this fork on the road and you take a different route. Tell us a little bit about that.
My family,
a lot of people sometimes stay in a place that they hate because they're just afraid to make anything different.
The thing is, I love being alive. I love being alive, and in that moment in my life, I wasn't alive, and I knew that. I would have conversations with people, and I couldn't retain the information, and I would ask the same thing over and over again. I have been going to the office nauseous for 7 months, crying almost every day. I was living in a state of survival. I didn't recognize myself. I was in the best shape of my life, but inside I was like feeling like really, really broken. I was extremely successful, but felt really unfulfilled. And I couldn't live with, I didn't want to live with that person. I wasn't proud of that person. Okay. And I knew deep down that no one was going to come and sort of like take me out of that wheel. It had to be myself. And it took me, like, I'm a fighter. Like, I hold on to things for dear life, and I'm like, no one's taking me away from here. And then, your health gets compromised, and you start having panic attacks, and that isn't normal for me. And I didn't want it to be normal for me. I'm an anxious person, but I had always found ways to sort of like navigate it. And I wanted to stop living as a passenger of my life, and I wanted to be in the driver's seat of my life. So I took my space and I took my time to do that.
And you traveled?
I traveled for a year.
Everything, boom, boom, went out.
Boom, boom.
Tell us a little bit about your discovery.
My family thought I was crazy. I lost so many friends when I did this. I went on a year trip sabbatical, backpacking around the world. I went to every continent except Antarctica. And the main goal for me was, okay, I need space to be with myself and get to know myself again. And I really want to understand how people live and how people connect and what brings people together. And back then, 2018, I wanted to understand what remote work was, because I loved working from home, but I wouldn't be allowed to work from home, even though I was like a very high productive person, even at 35%. And it just opened my eyes to a world I didn't know. I was in Puerto Rico in this tiny bubble, and Puerto Rico is a beautiful place to grow up in. And also, I wanted more for my life than just living in an island. So I did that, and with no agenda. I had 1 month of the entire trip planned, and the rest sort of happened, which is back then was very unlike me. And I just learned how to be with myself, which back then I hated. And I started exploring a lot of things. I started in the Amazon in Peru because I hated animals and didn't want to be like, that really took me out of my comfort zone. And I wanted to be as far away of my comfort zone as I could, and with no technology and access to data. And I'll talk more about this in the Latin talk that I'll give, but that really shook me. And that's when I learned how to be still and meditate and do yoga and to journal and sort of like really open myself up to other people and the challenges I was facing. I discovered my purpose. I taught salsa lessons to kids in the Amazon and gave a lot of seminars around how to build your audience online and how to build your brand. And I worked at a women empowerment foundation at Bangkok in Thailand, and I trained for my first marathon, and I did all the things that I always thought I had to wait to have a partner in my life to be able to do, and I just sort of did it. And it's been the greatest gift I've given myself.
Very cool. So after you do all that, you come back. Obviously, something interesting happened through the COVID time, right? Which triggered those creative juices in you.
So I'm a very honest, open, and vulnerable person. But when I came back from my trip, it was March 2019. I had a journal with me, so I started rereading all my journals from the year. And I knew I didn't want to be in Puerto Rico anymore. But one of the first things I did for my sabbatical was I got a natal chart reading with an astrologer from Colombia. And in that reading, she said, you need to move to Palo Alto because that's where the legacy of your life begins. Wow. And you're late. And I remember having this conversation with her in July 2018 and laughing. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm not moving to Palo Alto. Like, I know no one there. So yeah, I came back and I read that and I'm like, I'm going to Palo Alto. Huh. Why not? Like it was a full body yes. It was the craziest thing I've ever done in my life because I had nothing to fall back on. So I called my mom and I said, I need a $20,000 loan. Could you trust me? I'm moving to Palo Alto. And then my life changed. You're speechless.
No, yeah, a little bit. Because of what happened there?
I was in the darkest moment of my life.
In Palo Alto.
Yeah, I had no community. I knew no one. I had no financial stability. I knew I wanted to build something. I just didn't know what. I didn't know where to start. I started little by little getting to know people, and by the end of August of 2019, I remember I had $750 left in my bank account, and I had nothing to show for. Wow. Not even a job. So I called one of my advisors crying, and he was like, there's this woman that I'm really good friends with that works with high-performing women in helping them unlock their potential and build value-driven businesses. Would you be interested in meeting her? She's doing a group thing she's testing. And I'm like, sure. So he sends me the information. Her name is Tara Nicole Nilsson. She used to be the CMO of MyFitnessPal before they sold it for I don't know how many millions of dollars. And the group class was $750. So I gave it to her. I had no credit card. I was in debt. I called my brother and said, can you lend me $1,000 to pay my rent? And I had 2 weeks left of food. And this woman got me the privilege of getting to know myself in a very intimate way, from an archetype type of work. And 2 weeks later, Musicasa was born. And a month later, had raised $35,000. And I've never looked back.
That's very interesting.
It's a very interesting approach to build a business.
With sometimes when we're at that moment, this is the only thing I got, try to retain. In this case,
I just opened. I was like,
let it go.
It's this, or I go back to Puerto Rico and go back to the corporate world. I knew I could fall back to that. Right. And
see, that's the mindset, right? When you're sort of, know what you're looking for, you know what you want. Just open up and just let it flow. There's this thing called trust the process, but I don't know. I think you have to be a little bit more intentional. In this case, you were really searching, and whatever you were looking for was looking for you.
When I gave her my money, I was trusting the process. I knew nothing about this woman, just that she seemed pretty legit because of her background. That's it. To this day, she's still my friend.
No, you were searching, for sure.
I was trying to understand, what am I going to build that it's going to resonate with my purpose and with myself? My purpose is to spark joyful human connection. How do you monetize that? Yeah. Right? And she just uncovered for me, when I'm a connector, I'm an idealist, so I believe everything is possible. I don't take no for an answer, and I'm a nurturer. I build relationships. That's what I do. I build my wealth through relationships. That's what I do. So why not go back to the things I know how to do, which is connect people, use music, which is something that has been embedded in me since I was born in Puerto Rico, and do it in a place that allows for a culture of connection and belonging and dialogue to happen, which is a home. That's where you start building your relationships. Yeah. So I combined all those three things, and I said, okay, let's test it. If for anything, it's going to allow me to meet people and get a job in tech. let's do it.
Okay.
And then I spoke to my mentors and my siblings, and they were like, yeah, you were born to build this. Go build it. We don't know what's going to happen, but like, you have to trust that this is coming into your life for something.
Cool.
And now we're here.
Well, diving into the next step of life, which was the entrepreneurial side.
Yeah.
You've been really entrepreneurial for the last 3 years or so.
Yep.
And how did that idea of bringing concerts into people's homes, did that happen through COVID?
So that happened right before COVID. So it was September 2019.
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so I do this work with Tara. I realized that what I want to do is a platform that can bring people together and really sort of expose artists to audience that's willing to sort of pay and go listen to them and their story, but also a way in which we could bring people together and have spaces where storytelling could reign. And I remember going into a meeting in San Francisco, and I started talking about Musicasa as if it already existed. Like 2 weeks ago, it was in my journal.
Yeah, okay.
I wrote the entire business plan of Musicasa journaling one night, and 2.5 hours later, the entire business plan was created.
Wow.
And the people there were like, well, I know all the musicians in San Francisco because I used to do a party called Puerto Rico por una causa, where we would raise money after Hurricane Maria. So I'll give you my contacts. And then another person was like, well, I have a music room in my home that I don't use. It's perfect for a concert. It's yours. And I relayed back to when I was an account executive, which you would create a project plan and you would create a timeline and you would create a budget and you sort of like follow sort of like the executional steps on how to make something happen. I remember that first call with the person that knew all the artists. She spent 2 hours on the phone with me, giving me all the contacts. And she said, you're going to start with this woman called Adriana. That's going to be your first call. And Adriana unlocked, like I would say there's 450 artists in the platform for Musicasa. The first 100 was because of Adriana. It was crazy how people were like, yeah, we need this. What?
You're one person away from changing your life.
You're one person away from changing your life.
One person away from changing your life.
All the time. And all it took from me was like owning that I wanted to do this. And then we did. And I remember we raised money before the first concert ever happened. And the first concert was a flyer that was $20 per person, and 100% of the revenue will go to the artists. Like I didn't even, at that point, I wasn't even testing the actual business model that I had thought of. And it was sold out, and it was 20 people, and there were people from India, from Cuba, from Colombia, of course from Puerto Rico. There were people from Russia.
So you obviously it's web based, so this is open.
But
anywhere.
this wasn't even, there wasn't even a website. It was like word of mouth. Like there's a concert happening in this home in Castro District.
Testing the concept.
And I remember being there and the concert starts and I'm crying. I spent an hour crying. Because you see the physical manifestation of what you just wrote in a journal.
You had an idea.
Yeah.
You bring it into reality.
And then I remember like doing the content and posting it, and then I'm starting getting calls from Puerto Rico being like, why are you not doing this in Puerto Rico? And then from one concert in November, we went to 8 concerts in December.
Wow.
And it was like, what's going on?
So cool.
And then opening New York and LA in January, 2 months later, just to like start testing. And that was like 10 concerts, and then February, and then COVID hits. And I remember I couldn't, like when COVID hits and the announcement was done that the lockdown was gonna happen, I didn't even have time to get scared or to understand the magnitude of what we were doing. I was like, okay, we can't do concerts in people's homes anymore.
Yeah.
So let's go to Zoom. Zoom is the only platform that allows people to connect in real time.
Yeah.
The musician will be in their home, I'll be the host in my home, and people will connect from anywhere they want to connect. Let's test it. And I announced we were going virtual, and I had no concerts planned. I had no artist that said yes to me to like do the virtual version of Musicasa. But I knew that if I called this one artist and she said yes, the rest would say yes. So I called Andrea Cruz, which is today one of my favorite artists in the whole world. And I said, Andrea, you're not going to be performing for the next couple of months. Do you want to help me do this? She was like, yes. And Andrea has said to me to do Musicasa, no, 3 times already. So this was a stretch for me. She's like, yes, let's do it. When? I'm like, Thursday. She's like, done. We'll be ready. So we announced it and we sold out in less than 24 hours. And that first concert had 50 people, because we do intimate concerts, so it's 15 to 40 people. I was like, okay, we're gonna do 50. And it's been one of the greatest concerts we've ever had. People from all over the world joined. And in the first 30 days of COVID, we did 47 concerts, 100% of them sold out, paying musicians above market rate. And that's when I knew that people weren't doing this because they wanted to discover music. They were doing this because they wanted to connect in a different way. Of
course. And so your time right now is almost fully dedicated to that project?
I've dedicated my life to this since the moment I wrote it in a journal. I haven't done anything else outside of public speaking, which is of course one of my passions. But after COVID, I decided to move to Miami because it was the only place sort of opened during COVID that I could test the business model and the concept in person. So I moved here July 2020, and the first Musicasa was September. Sold that show. And then that got us enough traction to raise investors' money, and then get us to where we are today, which is we've tripled the business. We've built the MVP. We're now building the actual platform that's going to automate the entire business and bring some cool technologies into how we're doing the matching.
Awesome. Well, we'll leave it with that. I know you'll be speaking at Latin Talks.
Yes, I am.
And we're excited to hear your story deeper in there. Is there any final message? Because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that follow this channel, and I'm trying to inspire them.
Okay.
Go ahead and do it. Just do it. You had an idea. It wasn't perfect, right? I think what gave you more clarity was you went into action with the little that you knew. And I want to wake up to people and say, you don't need to know everything. And here's another story, another testimonial that you don't have to be waiting for the perfect time or the perfect plan. Just execute, because the action will sort of show you the next step. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I totally agree with that, and that's a synonym for being in the present moment. Like, nostalgia is the feeling that you get when you want to change the past, and anxiety is the feeling that you get when you're trying to control the future. But being in the present moment, you can actually recognize what you have at your disposal, what are your resources, and you get to put those resources to work. And that gives you power. It gives you power to act. And you're acting from a place of knowing that you have these resources, right? So that to me gave me a lot of courage, because I knew that I was starting something from nothing, but really it wasn't nothing. It was the 11 years of experience that I had. It was the fact that I grew up in a home in Puerto Rico that was basically a venue where my parents had hosted hundreds of gatherings like this one, right? I always joke that Musicasa is not my idea, it's my parents. I'm just the one executing it and taking it to millions of homes, right? But it's like, do the thing with what you have so that you can work towards the person that you want to be.
I love it.
And I'll close it with that.
Well, my takeaway of this conversation is that experience is the key to success, right? And then you taking action is what gives you the experience to have a higher chance of being successful.
100%.
So, yeah. Beatriz, let me shake that hand. Thank you once again for opening up to this audience and Dimensional. We're going to put Beatriz's handle around this video for you to follow her work, what she's doing, and make sure to share and of course subscribe if you haven't done so, if you got value from this interview, which I'm sure you did. Until next time, have a great one, everybody.
Ciao.
Take care.